Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Germantown Community Television's award-winning talk show, Crosstalk. I'm your host, Marinela Zubovic. Each week in this time slot, we take a look at different issues, personalities, and events that affect you and our community. In its 30-plus year history, the Poplar Pike Playhouse has been home to some very memorable events. It's where homegrown stars like Chris Parnell, Missy Pyle, and Susan Marshall got their start. Legendary Broadway composer Charles Strauss collaborated with the PPP in 1994 to debut his musical, Can't Stop Dancing. Today's show is dedicated to another landmark event at the Playhouse, the world premiere of Changing Minds. Later in the show, we will speak with the show's book writer and lyricist, David Howard, along with the composer, Brett Simmons. We also will be joined by two of the show's leading ladies, Melanie Culhane and Rachel Shannon. But first, I would like to welcome Steve Spiegel, the show's producer and the CEO of Theatrical Rights Worldwide. And joining him is the executive director of the Poplar Pike Playhouse, Frank Bluestein. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Glad to be here.
Now, the opening night of Changing Minds was so successful with the sold-out house and a standing ovation, and a lot of it can be contributed to your collaboration that you guys have been working together for so many years. Tell us about how you started working together.
Well, I've been in the licensing business my entire career, representing musicals, majority of them from the environment of Broadway, some off-Broadway, and making them available to all levels of theatrical organizations, not only here in the United States, but around the world, most of those organizations being schools, amateur organizations. And as a supplier, a distributor, a representative of these rights, these live stage performance rights on behalf of the authors, it was my responsibility to identify organizations that could produce these shows. So I would join different associations that had schools that were members. I would visit various schools. I would deal with the thespian representatives from these various states. And as a sole source provider, it was easy for people to find me. When a show is in a catalog, it's exclusive to that catalog. So I think as early as 1979 or 1980, Frank Bluestein had corresponded with me. Of course, then it would have been by rotary phone, and we would have discussed availability of titles and suitability of titles to the school environment. And one thing I knew from perhaps the first or second phone call with Mr. Bluestein was that he had the proper way of approaching doing the school musical. The quality, the professionalism, bringing a bit of Broadway to the school environment, the relationships it establishes between the performers, the band, the musicians, the technical crew, lighting, sound. He understood that it was a group activity. And so we started to talk about the availability of shows some 30 years ago.
And Mr. Bluestein, how did the idea of Changing Minds come to your desk?
Well, again, at some point I talked to Steve Spiegel, and he mentioned that he was developing this new show and wanted to know if I would be interested, if we were going to launch it in a high school environment, would we be interested in being that school? And he didn't put any pressure on me. He really didn't. He said, think about this long and hard, because we don't typically do a musical in the fall, and he wanted me to do it in the fall. And there were some other factors, and I did think about it for a while, but then I didn't want to pass up that opportunity. I've worked with Steve on so many other projects, and he has been so influential in helping me make decisions, like he said. And so I just jumped at the chance after we realized that we could do it here and we could make a go of it. I called and said, hey, let's work on this together.
And normally I know that when you do musicals, you cast or make a musical based on the cast that you have, the talent that you have. But this show was different.
Well, it was different because we were working from a script, obviously, that was there. And like you said, normally what I do, and I don't know if this is true of everybody, but what I do, since my talent pool is limited each year, I can only cast from the students in the school, I try to look to see who the students are and then pick maybe 2 or 3 musicals that I know would be good, that could feature the type of talent we have. In this case, I had to certainly go with what was in the script, and I had to fit the students that I had to those parts. But as it turned out beautifully. It turned out that we had just the right people to do those particular parts, and so that was perfect.
Mr. Spiegel, what were some of your goals with bringing Changing Minds to Poplar Pike Playhouse?
It was a process that's absolutely the reverse of the norm. In most instances, a musical will live in its first usage on Broadway or a regional theater going to Broadway and then a national tour, and there is a point of reference that a school environment would have to a show. Even if it was considered a new work, it would still have had a first production that could be referred to, and something that could be a little bit easier perhaps to mount in your own stage when you have that point of reference. In this case, it was a situation where I wanted to see where the proper environment would be to work with the authors, to provide the type of guidance and development attributes that are needed in developing a new work, with the understanding that this was the objective and the goal was exactly what we achieved, to get the show finished, to work on it a few months so that it would be ready to go out into the marketplace, so that it now did set the standard for what other schools would use when they do the show themselves.
And after so many weeks of hard work, I know, on the cast and the crew, how did you feel seeing the product kind of come to life on stage?
I felt wonderfully happy and gratified, and it basically reinforced what I do. Working with school productions, amateur productions, and seeing how the value of that experience contributes to their self-esteem, to the value of the process of being in a group doing a show. It was exactly what I wanted to achieve. It demonstrated that the material was A-level, that the response to the material matched that in the enthusiasm of the cast and the enthusiasm of the people in attendance at the show. I don't know when I've had so many positive comments about, not only is the show good, but how it really does capture the essence of what that age character is experiencing. So it was very rewarding, more than I could have even hoped for.
And Mr. Bluestein, I know you must have had some reservations about the show, but what was it like when you saw kind of the final product on stage? Well,
it was gratifying also. I had said to the authors today and composer that when I got the script, I felt it was their work, and I was going to try to be as true to it as I could, and I wanted for everybody to see what their work would look like on its feet. But as I got into it, I adopted it a little bit. In other words, it became a little bit of my own also, because after you work for 2 months on something day and night and think about it, and also have the ability to make some changes here and there with it, you really get to feel like it's part of your own, and like you're like a little child. I called it my adopted child. So it was great. It was great to see it. I'm so happy for them, for the author, composer, for Steve, because this is what they wanted to do. They wanted to see a full-blown production of the show, and I think we were able to give it to them. And what makes it a win-win is that for us and for the students that are in the cast and for the community that's going to see it, they're getting to see just a absolutely fabulous show that will, in the words of some of my students, will blow their minds.
And kind of a once-in-a-lifetime
It is
event.
A once-in-a-lifetime. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event, and you can say all those things about it that you'll never get the opportunity to. But if it's still not a good show, you can say,
right.
Well, okay. But this is a great show. It turns out that it's just really a fun, fresh, a show that everybody is going to like, and is so fun to be in, and then so fun, I think, to watch. And it has something to say, I might add.
Yes.
It has something to say that it has its message, and they don't knock you over the head with it, but it's there, and I think that's important also.
Exactly. A very subtle kind of message thrown in there.
Exactly.
And Mr. Spiegel, what are your hopes for this show? Beyond closing night here, where do you see this show going in the future?
Well, I think that it achieved a lot of the goals that we had set for it a few years back, which was to be an original work that would involve a large group of performers, because what I would hear always from high school theater directors was, why aren't there shows with more roles for girls? Why aren't there more shows that have more than just the lead story and 2 characters telling it all night? Why isn't there a show that has, you know, perhaps 4 good parts for boys, 4 good parts for girls? So the authors addressed that need and delivered something that's wonderful. So where I think this goes from here is a few different directions. The first would be into the high school environment, to see as many high schools, and there are over 15,000 that we deal with that do musicals and that actively produce new work each year. So we'd like to see them, the word adopt is a great word, adopt and take a chance, because when it's an unknown property, this is not based on a famous movie, good or bad. It's not based on a famous book. The idea came out of, how can we accomplish the objective of a new musical about a week in the life of high school seniors, high school students. So I think if it went into the marketplace and just saw school productions, that'd be very satisfying. If it went into the marketplace and we saw professional productions, regional productions, tours, Broadway, West End in London, that is certainly on the mission list, but it's not the must-happen list.
Well, whatever happens with this musical, it's been a delight to work on and be a part of, and I want to thank you both for being on the show today.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you.
We have to take a short break. When we return, I'll be joined by the writer and composer of Changing Minds, David Howard and Brett Simmons. Please stay with us.